Brazil is one of the world's major food producers. Perhaps what many people may not know is that Brazil holds this position while preserving 66.3% of its forests.
Stop. Before we go on, just a quick correction. Brazil does not preserve 66% of its forests. About 66% of its territory is covered with native vegetation. That doesn't mean all of it is preserved. Much of that vegetation is in private properties, which are allowed to legally clear-cut 20 to 80% of their areas. Indeed, between 1985 and 2019, Brazil lost 87 million hectares of its native cover. That's 5 times the area of Florida.
Today, Brazil is discussing landholding policies in order to fight against illegal deforestation and wildfires.
Dead wrong. The most efficient landholding policies against deforestation and fires include creating protected areas and demarcating indigenous lands. That's not at all in the plans of Brazil's current administration. In fact, the opposite is true. President Jair Bolsonaro wants to undo protected areas and previous indigenous land demarcations.
Sendo obrigado, não tem mais reserva indígena no Brasil. Muito pelo contrário. Vamos rever as que foram demarcadas com laudos, com muita suspeição de fraude no passado.
Imagine someone driving around town without a license plate number while committing several traffic violations. Traffic violations count on strict law enforcement. All it takes is to identify, monitor, and punish reckless drivers. The same principles apply when we think about land ownership.
Well, that makes no sense, does it? If a reckless driver is committing serial violations, he must be pulled over and fined, maybe even arrested. The police don't need to know who owns the car before they act. The same applies to deforestation. Even if no one knows who owns the land, law enforcement agencies can act against violators in the field. In fact, they used to. Between 2004 and 2009, Brazil reduced deforestation by 70% without changing any land tenure legislation, just by fining and arresting wrongdoers.
Unregistered land is more difficult to monitor and control. Deforestation rate in illegal areas located in the Amazon biome of Pará state, for instance, has been 134% higher than in regulated areas.
The opposite is true. Several studies have shown that in the absence of environmental inspections and economic incentives, farmers actually increase deforestation right after they grab hold of a land title. That makes sense because after they get the title, they feel more comfortable investing in deforestation, which is expensive, in order to incorporate new land to their production area.
We must bear in mind that indigenous lands, traditional communities, conservation areas, and land reform settlements are legally protected under their own legislation.
Well, yes, but it's no good to have beautiful legislation on paper and not enforce it. In Brazil, the government is playing against enforcement. In 2019, deforestation in protected areas increased by 44%. In indigenous lands, it increased by 91%. The Amazon as a whole saw a 34% increase in deforestation, which means protected areas are being devastated way above average. According to indigenous rights watchdog CIMI, the invasions of indigenous lands increased by 135% in the first year of the Bolsonaro regime. What's more, the very legislation that protects them is under threat. The government sent a bill to Congress this year, opening up all indigenous lands to mining, logging, and ranching.
Landholding regulations apply mainly to small farmers. For instance, families that have settled in their land for decades without proper documentation.
Another correction is in order here. According to official data, 95% of all property awaiting a land title in the Amazon is smallholder and family farms up to 400 hectares in size. Having said that, the government already today has the legal means to give land titles to those farmers. A law passed in 2009 allows for express titling of farms of up to 400 hectares in the Amazon. The Bolsonaro government apparently is not exercising its power to use current legislation to benefit smallholder farmers. Last year, it only gave away 6 land titles. Yes, you heard right. 6, compared to an average of nearly 3,200 a year over the past decade.
Simplifying landholding processes through geotechnology and remote sensoring is a way to monitor and control the territory of a continental-sized country.
Pardon my French, but that's bullcrap. there is no shade of a connection between land tenure law and remote sensing. Satellite monitoring is already in place today, either by government agencies such as the National Institute for Space Research or by civil society initiatives like Project Map Biomass, which has already built maps of all land cover change in Brazil from 1985 to 2019. Listen, landholding regulation is a serious issue. There are actually farmers who need it in the Amazon, and it can benefit the forest and its peoples if it's well done. But it must be debated seriously with society, with transparency and scientific data, not misinformation. The real Brazilian agribusiness can be a force for good and prosperity, but it doesn't have to lie.